Hello, a good way to think about magic and quantum collapse is to realize that in quantum collapse we are selecting histories. We select histories with quantum collapse. 36% of physicists today believe that histories are selected randomly through the Copenhagen interpretation. A lot of people think about the result of the live or the dead cat. They don't think about the histories that led up to those alive or dead cats when we measure the cat after we open the box. Because we measured the cat after we open the box, and it's only then that it loses its superposition. So we have to alter the Born rule, as I teach in other videos, etc., etc. But this is the Born-Hilborn mechanics of magic. As people have always sensed that thought does something. Every religion knew it, every magician knew it, every grandmother who told a child not to speak bad things into the world knew it. The modern world laughed and put on a lab coat and said, no, thoughts are just private bubbles inside skull meat. Lovely little materialist bedtime story. But quantum mechanics has already ruined that simplicity. We've had alternatives to brain memory for 120 years. The observer matters, measurement matters, and expectation matters. And if the Born rule is incomplete, then what we call magic may not be superstition at all. It may be misunderstood collapse. Arthur C. Drake famously said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic, but the Born-Hilborn interpretation goes further. Any sufficiently advanced understanding of collapse reveals that magic was always primitive physics, wearing a candlelit hat. Clarke's line is sourced to Profiles of the Future, where he framed it as one of the laws about the limits of imagination. Aleister Crowley defined magic as causing change to occur in conformity with will. Strip away the robes, incense, and theatrical eyeliner, and that sentence is surprisingly close to the target. Born-Hilborn says, yes, but now we can say how. Magic is not breaking nature. Magic is adding expectation weight to quantum collapse. That is the core. In standard quantum mechanics, the Born rule tells us how possible outcomes receive their ordinary quantum weight. It works as prediction. It does not work as final explanation. It gives the odds, but it does not explain why one lived history becomes actual. That part is random. The Born-Hilborn rule adds the missing factor. Expectation weight across space-time allows us to get the one world we know and love out of the ever many worlds. Not fantasy. I want to, not fantasy expectations like I want the cake, therefore the cosmos owes me dessert. Expectation means structured thought pressure from observer loci across the block universe. It's mathematical. I'm speaking about every Planck length moment of time adding global consistency. Every time you open your eyes, you collapse the entire universe of what it's been. So that's how we get global consistency. Every observer matters. Every observer contributes weight. Every expectation leans on the possible histories. Every thought, memory, fear, prayer, desire, and active attention becomes part of that global accounting. That is why magic is real in this model. Thought itself is action, not metaphorically, mechanically. You don't need to do physical stuff to make things happen. Thought is enough. A thought does not merely sit inside the head like a hamster. A thought is a collapse-weighted event. It is a small pressure added to the history in which that thought becomes coherent. If enough thought weight gathers, and if the surrounding history can accept it without tearing, collapse favors that path. That is magic. But now we must say the part foolish magicians forget. Magic has limits. The universe is not a vending machine with incense. Continuous collapse happens across all observers. Not just you. That means reality must maintain global consistency. The world is not built from your private wish alone. It is built from nested observers, future expectations, past coherence, memory structures, social reality, biological need, environmental constraint, and the deeper ledger of the whole CPT structure within the block universe. So if you try to manifest something that bends the world too violently, which you can, the wider collapse may reject it, absorb it, delay it, redirect it, or undo it. That is not failure. You can still see you're manifesting in magic. That is consistency. Magic works best where the history has room to move. That is why magic is often strongest away from mass observation. Witches in the woods. Not because the universe is shy. Man on the mountain. Because heavily observed reality is heavily stabilized. A crowd airport at noon is dense with observer weight. A public courtroom, a hospital chart, a bank ledger, a live television broadcast. These are hard crystallized histories. Too many minds, too many records, too much agreement. The branch is nailed down. But look up at a cloud in the sky and you can melt it with your mind within like 10 minutes. Private spaces are softer. Dreams, coincidences, chance meetings, songs on the radio. How did that song come on the radio right after you started thinking about it without collapsing a history where that song was going to come on the radio right after you started thinking about it? Missing objects reappear. Stranger saying the sentence you needed. The right book falling open. Garbage at your feet can guide you. Weather that turns at that right hour. A cat deciding exactly when to sit beside you as if dispatched by a... I was going to say angel. Those are softer edges of collapse. Magic prefers margins, not because margins are unreal, but because margins are less over-observed. Fewer witnesses means less resistance from the global consistency field. There's more slack in the selected history. Your magic will work better away from crowds. Now this is where the skeptics get confused. They think magic must mean violating physics. No, that is crude. Real magic uses physics more deeply than the skeptics understand. Shakespeare gave Hamlet the line about there being more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in Horatio's philosophy. That line survives because every age has its Horatios, clever men with tiny maps guarding tiny doors, saying surely reality cannot be larger than my filing cabinet. The Bourne-Hilborn interpretation says reality is larger because measurement is larger. Collapse is not a logo click. Collapse is a continuous history selection of clicks. Every moment possible histories are being weighted. Some histories gather support. Some lose support. Some remain coherent. Some fade. That means magic is not one miracle event. Magic is repeated waiting. Think of a river. A single thought is a pebble. It makes a ripple. A repeated thought becomes a current. A shared thought becomes a tide. A disciplined expectation becomes a channel. And a channel over time teaches water where to go. That is how magic works. Not by screaming at the universe, by steadily wading a path. This also explains why emotion matters. Emotion is not decorative. Emotion is amplitude triggers from simultaneous spacetime's moment from thought weight. A cold passing thought has little force. A thought joined to love, fear, gratitude, desire, or faith has more collapse pressure. That is why worry is dangerous. Worry is not following your bliss. Worry is magic performed badly. Worry is the ritual of visualizing what you do not want, adding fear repeatedly and then call it being realistic. Very scientific, very tragic, very stupid. A person saying, I'm worried because I care. Bourne-Hilborn says caring is good, but worry is care pointing at the wrong branch. Distract yourself. Turn on a TV. Do something, but you're not doing them any good by worrying, visualizing the bad. Faith is care pointing at the better branch. Daydreaming is not useless either. Daydreaming is rehearsing inside the selection field. It gives the soul a felt route toward a possible history. You can practice the good outcomes. When gentle, grateful, repeated daydreaming becomes expectation training, it teaches the self which world to recognize is available. That is why magic is not desire. Desire says, I want. And I want is in the future. Expectation says, this can be. Magic says, I have. Faith says, this is the branch I will stabilize. Action says, I am now living as if this branch is real enough to enter. Magic requires all of them. Desire without expectation is begging. Expectation without action is fantasy. Action without faith is mechanical struggle. Faith with thought, feeling, and action becomes collapse alignment. That is the mathematics behind ritual. Ritual is not powerful because candles have opinions. Ritual is powerful because it focuses attention, emotion, symbol, repetition, and embodiment action into one expectation field. A ritual is a compressed device for collapsed weight. Prayer does the same. Meditation does the same. A vision board does the same. Although with I don't know about a song, a wedding vow, a funeral rite, a national anthem, a courtroom oath, a graduation ceremony. All of these are social magic. We already believe in it. We simply call it culture. When enough people do it in expensive clothing. A judge says words and two people are married. A crowd sings words and a nation remembers itself. A doctor says words and the patient's future changes. Words are not just words. Words are structured expectations sent into history. Now we can explain why magic sometimes fails. It fails when the desired branch lacks support. It fails when the person's deeper expectation contradicts the spoken wish. It fails when fear has more weight than faith. It fails when the surrounding observer field is too rigid. It fails when the future histories have stronger claims. It fails when the request would break global consistency. It fails when the universe says, in effect, cute, but no, that branch cannot carry the whole ledger. You'll have procrastination face you. This is why people have writer's block, because the universe does not expect you to write a best-selling novel. You have to fight against all the weight of thought pushing against you. If you're going to do anything, you need to break through the mental barriers. This is why mature magic is not childish command. It is negotiation with coherence. The magician is not a tyrant. The magician is participant in collapse. You do not order the universe around. You learn how to lean with enough clarity that the universe can lean back. This is also why secrecy appears in magical traditions. Not because secrets are spooky, because premature exposure invites counterweight. To be silent is rule number 2, based on rule number 1, which is energy follows all thought. But in rule number 2, we're speaking about the thoughts of others. To be silent is in regards to the thoughts of others because of the pushback. If you tell a fragile intention to a room full of cynics, their disbelief, mockery, envy, fear, and boredom become part of the field, become part of the pushback. Mass observation hardens reality. Mockery can collapse possibility downward. This is why the old advice says, guard the seed before it sprouts. Not forever, just until the history has roots. The Bourne-Hilborn rule makes sense of that. The future has weight too. It cannot manifest outside the deeper architecture of future expectation. We work inside the larger framework of what future observers, future selves, future civilizations, and higher personifications are already wading into history. That is why some desires feel strangely supported, doors open, people appear, timing bends, the path feels pre-lit. Sometimes destinies will just light up in front of us. Other desires feel like dragging a piano through wet cement. This is not random. It means one branch has future weight behind it and another does not. So the wise magician does not merely ask, what do I want? The wise magician asks, what future is already trying to become real through me? That is where magic becomes holy. At the lower level, magic is getting the job, the money, the lover, the healing, the sign, the strange coincidence. Fine. Humans have rent. The universe understands. But at the higher level, magic is cooperation with teleology. It is helping the best future select its past. It is becoming the ancestor of a better history. The Bourne-Hilborn rule therefore applies to everything we have been discussing. It applies to memory because memory is not dead storage. It is access to selected history. It is thoughts themselves. Memory and thoughts have the same mechanism. It applies to teleology because future expectation helps weight ancestral past. It applies to thought because thought is action inside collapse. It applies to religion because faith is expectation disciplined toward the highest coherent future. It applies to soul because the soul is continuing personification moving through selected histories. It applies to magic because magic is intentionally expectation waiting. That is why I call it a golden rule. It does not merely explain one paranormal corner. It explains why the paranormal, the religious, the psychological, the quantum, and the classical physics were never truly separate. They were different languages for history selection. Science saw probabilities. Religion saw faith. Magic saw will. Psychology saw expectation. Born Hillborn puts them into mathematics, one mechanism. Now, many worlds is cosmic hoarding. It cannot bear to choose, so it keeps every branch in the attic. And a lot of people cannot consider that we can select one world because it removes brain body from the equation. They think that every cat, dead cat, alive cat, half the audience became dentists. Somebody married a toaster. All of it real somewhere, apparently. Very generous, also completely allergic to actuality. In the many worlds interpretation, you would have an immortal cat, because every time a cat tried to die, the alternative would live somewhere. It doesn't make sense, this immortal world theory that they keep talking about. The Born Hellborn interpretation says, no, possibilities are candidates. Candidates are not winners. One history is selected by weighted expectation across space-time. That history becomes the whole world. That gives us magic without chaos. If every whim instantly became real, reality would dissolve into cartoon soup. You don't get an elephant in your bathtub just because you imagine it so. One man wants rain, another wants sun, one child wants school canceled, the principal wants the buses running. Somewhere a cat wants tuna, and the tuna doesn't want to meet that cat. Global consistency prevents collapse from becoming nonsense. Global consistency is you opening your eyes and you're collapsing the world as you see it after it's come to you from the rest of the universe of collapsers. Magic works because thought has weight. Magic is limited because everyone's thought has weight. That is the balance. That is the key. And that balance is merciful. It means your fear does not automatically destroy the world. Thank God. Humans are anxious little creatures. If every intrusive thought instantly manifested, civilization would last 6 minutes. But repeated, emotionally charged, identity level expectation does matter. You're casting all the time. Your assumptions are spells. Your fears are spells. Your gratitude is a spell. Gratitude is the most obvious hack to love. Your bitterness is a spell. Your self-image is a spell. Your judgment is a spell. Your prayer is a spell. Your daydream is a spell. Your realism is often just pessimism with a fake mustache and a clipboard. So, choose carefully. The magician is not someone who owns a crystal wand. A magician is someone who understands that attention is participation. Born Hellborn magic begins with this command. Stop donating weight to the histories you do not want. Then, give weight to the history that can carry joy, coherence, beauty, courage, and life. Then act, because action is thought made dense. Action is expectation with shoes on. When you act toward a history, you're not merely trying, you're voting with your body inside collapse. You're telling the universe, this is the branch I recognize. This is the branch I will stabilize. This is my life. This is why small actions matter. A phone call, an apology, a walk, a clean room, a written page, a kind word, a refusal to panic, a refusal to rehearse failure, a quiet decision to expect better. These are not small in the collapse field. They are branch weight. This is the first time anyone has ever taught this stuff mathematically. Magic is the art of expectation, weighted participation in the history selection. The Born Hellborn rule is the mathematics of magic because it explains how thought can matter without breaking reality. It explains why faith works, why fear harms, why secrecy helps, why ritual focuses, why action anchors, why future purposes pull, why memory guides, and why the universe sometimes seems to be answering in symbols. Timing dreams, coincidences, impossible little gifts, and garbage on the ground to guide us. It is not supernatural. It is supernatural only in the sense that nature is far larger than materialism allowed. Our brains are not big enough for the temporal mechanics of mind. Magic is not outside physics. Anyone who's manifested anything knows that there's temporal mechanics that are minds can't fit in our brains. So if you've manifested, then you know that we're in a dream scenario that we must wake up from. So manifesting and magic proves the dream scenario already and proves idealism to those people. But not everyone has the ability to manifest or has tried manifesting. Magic is physics with the observer put back into the equation. And for the first time, we can say what the ancient people were saying. The spell was expectation. The altar was attention. The offering was emotional weight. The ritual was repeated collapse training. The miracle was a history finding enough support to become real. So do not treat your mind as private trash floating in a skull. Treat thought as a sacred action. Do not treat daydreaming as useless. Treat it as rehearsal for the history you are willing to help select. Do not treat worry as wisdom. Worry is bad. Treat it as accidental black magic. Worry is black magic. Do not treat faith as childish. Treat it as disciplined physics. Because in this model, reality is not dead matter waiting to be noticed. Reality is a living selection field. Every observer contributes. Every expectation leans. Every thought votes. And every moment asks the same question. Which history are you helping become real? The end.